But here's the beautiful thing, because there's layers to everything. All communication has multiple layers. Every single one of you use hypnosis all the time, and you don't even realize it. But the idea here is, when I said there's a lot of people doing things that are bad on Amazon and being rewarded for it, and I want you to be good, I really created this implicit contract with the audience that says, Jason, I'm going to show you whether I do it good or bad. I'm going to do it, right? Because there's a part of your audience that says, oh, I want to cheat. All of us have this desire. None of us want to admit this. If we're honest, we admit this. So 99% of the population, literally speaking, only 1% of the population is hardwired not to experience this. But 99% of the population, they really are looking for things where they can do the least amount of effort to get the most amount of results. Some people call this greed. And left unchecked, greed is bad, right? Some people call this, looking for the shortcuts, which is just another fancy way of saying I want to do less effort than the next guy but get more than the next guy. Any logical, intelligent human being wants to do the least amount of effort to get the most amount of results. Bill Gates has this quote, if I really need something done, I'm going to find a lazy person because they're going to find the most strategic way to get it done. And what I just did there is basically allowed that person to, if they wish to, do things wrong on Amazon, to manipulate the system and still be successful. And that's very powerful because that person is actually, it's a safety net. They say, I'm going to try it Jason's way. But even if it doesn't work, I can break the rules if need be to be successful. Now the reality is, and it's a stupid process, I don't want them to do that. Because it's easier to be honest and make $10 million than it is to be dishonest and make $1 million. We can swim upstream by trying to cheat the system, or we can swim downstream. I'd rather swim downstream. So it's better to have products. It's better to have ones that people like. If everybody else is buying these crappy products and you could sell a good product, you certainly should sell a good product, right? But it also opens the door for me later to talk about, at the end of the day, Amazon wants what's in front of the customer. We just need to get in front of the customer. And there are ethical ways of doing that, and there are not so ethical ways of doing that. And when it comes to people's livelihood, all of a sudden we take some very nice church-going people who are willing to hack the Amazon search algorithm and do all kinds of crazy shit they would never do, right? But by positioning it as, I don't want you to do this, when you go and do your Amazon business, what's the presupposition? You're going to. Just don't be mean when you go and do it means you're going to do it. And these are more than anything how we have to talk to our audience. You have to talk as if you already assuming that they're going to do every single thing you said, even though I knew as I was talking about homework, not a single person was going to do that homework. And if they did, God bless them. It would help me. If they didn't, doesn't matter. James.
Two things. You kept your authority by saying you have my permission to not listen to a word I say later. And then you also said, here's the problem with Amazon, or the solution. Here's the problem with the solution. They trust it too much. And it's like, that's not a problem.
Yeah, I know, right? That's the false problem, right? Here's the problem with making $1 million. You got to pay taxes on it, right? It's a tough problem. The thing, too, is that what I just showed there, though, is this. This is why I did that. I'm glad you brought that up. Is because somebody wants to err on the side of being successful, saying, well, gee, worst case scenario, if I sell this product, I can do okay even if I don't know what I'm doing, simply because people will buy shit on Amazon all day long and forget about it, right? So they're like, whew, that's the safety net. I always try to sell 2 layers when I sell. And that goes back to the psychological fear of screwing up, right? They're going to go out there, they're going to try their best. They're going to make it, they're going to do everything they possibly can to be successful. But if that doesn't work, they can still cheat, or they can still break the rules, or they can still do it wrong and be successful. So we always give that it's called a double bind in psychology. We give them a situation where no matter what, they feel like the outcome is assured. So like I'll give you a thing I do. I did this at a mastermind recently. I was speaking on a stage, and I was working with the audience and breaking all their patterns in real time, and it was really cool. And some guy says, oh, it's like, how do I convince my audience that they don't have to fear failing, that they can be successful? And I said, first of all, well, what does success look like? And they said, $10,000 a month. And I said, listen, let me ask you a question. How could you fail your way to making $10,000 a month? And I said, listen, when you go to fail your way to $10,000 a month, you might have the tendency to want to make $100,000, but I'm not going to let you do that yet. Because for you to first succeed, you have to fail. So let's figure out, what would it take for you to fail your way to $10,000 a month? This is what I was saying to this kid, right? And it was just blowing their mind. It's a double bind. If he succeeds, he makes $10,000. If he fails, he makes $10,000. So if we can learn to talk to our audience in a language where it doesn't matter if you succeed or not, you're going to be better off than you were before you started. That sells more than just about anything. So the idea is on these products, I'm continually setting these double binds. If you sell a great product, great, you'll make a lot of money. If you end up with a shit product, great, you'll still make money, right? If you're an ethical seller and you're selling really good stuff on Amazon, people will buy from you because they trust you. If not, they'll still buy from you anyway, because we always have those 2 a.m. drunken purchases. And now, at the end of the day, if I got to pay bills, I'll take any drunken 2 a.m. purchase of my product. I will not have such a moral strong compass anymore, because it's either the kids starved this week or some drunk guy starts to buy stuff on Amazon recklessly. And I want to be there when that happens. Now, most of us become detached for our customers. I'm glad you brought this up, because most of us forget the struggles that got us there in the first place, right? This is an $11,000 suit. That's insane, isn't it? I bought it off Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, right? When I started my business, I had a one-room apartment that was essentially the living room, was the office, was the bedroom. And I had a decision to make, because I had X number of dollars to spend. I could buy a desk to work on, or I could buy a bed to sleep on. What do you think I bought? A desk. A $200 desk, right? This is $330, right? And I only bought it because I was like, well, he already paired the colors together. You know, I know I could just go somewhere simpler like Kohl's and get one of these for like $20. But he paired them together. So why not? $330, well, why not decision. This is where I'm at now. This is the life I live. How can I relate to a beginner getting started? How can you relate to people who are at the beginning of the problem and you're at the far end of the problem, the solution? How do you do that, right? I'll tell you how you do that. You are constantly obsessive over the challenges that they're facing by paying attention to them, by understanding who they are, by knowing the challenges that they have, knowing the problems that they have. I mean, like Will and I, well, Will more specifically, I read all the comments on the product launch videos, but Will would get on the phone with people. We would do this guarantee, and then people would want to get their money back, the double your money back guarantees, and Will would say, listen, you can quit right now, or we can take a second look at this to see if you should quit or not. And he would get on the phone with them, and we would hear the same thing every single time. It was either a time problem or a money problem, and the close was always the same. Well, listen, are you going to find another opportunity to replace this opportunity? Or is this still the best thing you know of to change your financial situation? So how is stopping doing this going to help you solve your financial problems? Right? I mean, I'm paraphrasing very, very briefly here. And they would say, well, gee. And so you would find out at the end of the day, it would come down to something like this. I just had a newborn daughter, Jason, and I don't feel responsible spending money on this course with this newborn daughter. It's going to take a lot of my time. I want to make sure I'm there for her. I have the resources for her. I say, great. You're more likely to succeed than anybody. They say, what do you mean? I said, because every night you pick your daughter up and look her in the eye, you either tell her you're a success or a failure. Did you move forward today or not? You have the ultimate motivation to succeed. And they're like, wow, you're right, thank you, right? It is true, though, because most of us forget how hungry we were when we started. Ain't that the truth? So everything I do and anytime I pitch, I try to channel that. I think about the person on the other end, and I think about the real struggles that they have. First of all, nobody believes in them. And I don't care what it is. Nobody believes in them. And logically, they shouldn't believe in them. I failed at the first 400 things I tried to do to make money online, right? So doesn't it make sense on the 401st time I would also fail? Of course I would fail, right? Until I didn't anymore. So nobody believes in them. They don't even believe in themselves. They think that there's something wrong with them psychologically, because why do they want to do this thing so badly? And why can't they do it? And then guys like me come on the line and hype it to the moon, right? I start talking about, like casually, like, $1 million, that's nothing, right? And they're like, Jesus, this guy is just selling the dream, and we are selling the dream. We got to sell the dream, right? Nobody will run the race unless they see the finish line. And they're like, this is possible. There's one seed in me that I believe can sprout and can grow. But here's the day-to-day problems, right? And you start factoring down. What do they feel like when they wake up in the morning? They don't feel good. What are all the self-doubts that are just keeping them imprisoned in their mind, you know? And by the way, all of us have these same exact things, so it's not hard to miss them. It's like, so many people come up to me and say, Jason, you're not a big fat ass anymore, right? I mean, they're nicer than that, but that's what they're saying, right? And I'm like, true, because I had some issues that prevented me from getting healthier. And I work through them the same way that our customers have to work through their issues with being successful on Amazon or being successful with everything they used to. So we're not impervious to this. We just got really good at doing it with one specific thing. So whether it's selling, or whether it's options trading, or whether it's helping people get to a webinar, or whether it's selling on Amazon, right? Or whether it's books, Rory, right? We all got good at one thing at the expense usually of several other things, right? But now take somebody who's working a full-time job, 60 to 80 hours a week, and then their wife, they're coming home, and their wife is kind of like, I thought you were the man. I thought you were supposed to be supporting this family, right? And she's not happy with them, so now the relationship is on turmoil, and he's wasting his time when he could be spending time with the kids watching these webinars and these online videos on Facebook and all this kind of crap, and he's just, in the back of his mind, he's got one wish, and that's to be able to be at the finish line of what he wants. Whether that's financial independence, whether that's health, whether that's a different relationship, whether that's whatever the case may be. And our goal is to try to figure out how to have him see the finish line today and believe he can get there. And so when I talk about the product selection, that's what I'm talking about. Not product selection. I'm talking about that outcome of somebody seeing themselves put something online and have money come to them. But all of that's filtered through that pain points that they're experiencing. So you got to know your customer, of course. Duh, we all know that, right? But we got to know them intimately and more deeply than they know themselves. Kevin.
So for
right.
what's the best way to figure out what is the customer out?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So survey is the worst way to do it, by the way, right? I'll tell you the best answer. The laziest way possible is to write a check and have somebody do it for you. Hire a company that's really good at that. That is the best way to do it if you're lazy, right? I would like to be intelligently lazy. So what I did for Amazon was when they did the pre-launch videos and there was thousands of comments on each and every single video, I read through those comments. And I would say I was lazy because it took me like 4 to 6 hours and then I never had to do it again. So one of the things that we discovered was nobody knew how to calculate profit margin. And so people would spend all this time talking and selling the dream, and I'd spend the first 15 minutes of my webinar doing like 3 things. Thing number 1, this is what a private label product is. See this thing? You put a label on it. It's private label. Let me show you again. See this box? We put a logo on it. Now it's private label. Now let me tell you how we calculate profit margin. This is the amount of money you spend. This is the amount of money that comes out. And if it's a positive, that's good. And if it's a negative, that's bad. I'm not that condescending. But we would spend 10 to 15 minutes on this because they could not foresee how they would be successful until they first understood some of the basics. Now everybody's learned that now, which is crazy. Now we don't talk about profit margin anymore. And we don't talk, because people have now generally accepted, because they've heard 6,000 marketers talk about how, yeah, you sell physical products, you get a 50% profit margin, right? So now it's entered into like the zeitgeist of the marketplace. So now we sell other things. What we now sell against is the idea of if you're selling e-commerce stuff off of Amazon, you're attacking Amazon. You don't want to sell on Amazon, you want to sell on Shopify. Because Amazon doesn't allow you to control this, and this, right? Now, first of all, there's no magic solution. Everything has advantages and disadvantages. But now we have to change the positioning in order to sell against that. That's the new place of the customer. So I like to read the comments. But more importantly is you've got to read what they're saying in between the lines. Here's the problem with this deep-seated primal motivator here, is they don't want to tell you what it is. They're scared to say it out loud. They don't want to tell themselves. Why do you want to get rich, James? Yeah, right. Most of us want to get rich because when we were little, something traumatic happened to us that put us in a state of such pain that we said, I never want to be in that state again, and then we devoted the rest of our lives to getting out of that state, right? That was my experience. That's why we wanted to get rich. But society's telling us, well, you're more than your fair share, and that you're greedy if you're rich, and religion's telling us what profit the man that gained the world and lose his soul, right? And so you're conflicted. So I know with my audience, they want to get rich, oftentimes to run away from things that have happened to them because they never want to be in a position again where they were lacking. It's not even abundance. They never want to be in a position again where they had to sit down and say, my life is fucked. Yeah, what's that?
To get close to my mom.
To get close to your mom, right?
She wasn't there.
Totally. So if we did any number of focus groups, any number of surveys, we would never get that shit, right? Now these are hard, right? This is tough. I can't hit it head on, right? It's too traumatic. So we have to eat around the edges of that. So we could talk about certain things like where you're able to, what is financial independence? It's autonomy. Well, what does autonomy mean? It means to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, and how you want it. And you can use general rhetoric like that. And you can say, listen, I know there was a point in time in your life, this is how you use the words of hypnosis. I know there was a certain point in your life when you wanted to be able to do something, you went to go and do it. And the only thing that stopped you was a bank balance. And I don't know what you felt then, but oftentimes when I hear people talk about this situation, they feel ashamed. And they feel like less of a person. How is it that we're born in a first world country with more opportunity than anywhere else in the world, if this is a United States audience, right? Which some of you are, right? And yet we end up where we're at. Is there something wrong? Maybe people start to question who they are as an individual. Did I screw up somewhere along the way? Is there something wrong with me? And I'm going to tell you this. You come from the infinite. And so therefore within you is infinite possibility and capabilities. Every single year there's more money on the planet than the year before. Every single year there's more opportunity than ever before. So the real question is it your time to take advantage of it? Because I don't know what you want to do now, but I do know that if you go and reach into your bank account to make it happen, don't you want to know you can do that and not even think about what the balance is? Instead, you can think about the experience that can create, right? Now, this is a language pattern I'm using. Everything I said there was true for every single person in this room without being specific to any one single person's needs. I don't know how I can teach you that shit. That took me hundreds of hours to learn how to do that. A lot of hypnosis, right? I don't know how you felt when you went to your bank account and realized there wasn't enough there, but these are some of the things that people have told me and the experiences they've had. Now, if I hit on any that's true to you, you'll agree with me. If I haven't, you'll replace those feelings with your own feelings, right? And then I started changing things. One of the things that I did was I studied logic, a lot of logic, and then I figured out how to break each and every single logical thing, like intentionally commit logical fallacies. And everybody does it all the time, so it's great. So I said, within you is the infinite, right? You come from the infinite. Maybe, I don't know, the atheists might disagree with me, right? But it sounds good in the moment, so therefore within you is the infinite. Is that true? Who knows, right? It sounds good, though. It just reframes you to opportunity as opposed to what you lack. So I focus on the pain, the lacking, and then I show the opportunity, the promise, right? And I know we're getting way too in the weeds because we're supposed to just be dissecting video too here. But literally, we're setting up the frame to do all that. Does that make sense? And so notice how I gave a lot of education there. I talked a lot of specific things, but we're walking them closer. When they get on the webinar, I got screenshots of products. I showed them what a bestseller rank is. I show them where products are, like Snorkels, with a screenshot of a first page result from a product. So I'm not just making claims. I'm setting up things that I'm going to pay off. And that's one of the most powerful things you can do in these product launch videos is set up things that you know you can pay off later. Somebody says, I don't know, Jason, 7 reviews, somebody's buying that. I can see that. Maybe. And then they get on the webinar and there it is in front of their face. And they're like, damn. That's anchoring and amplifying. We anchor it, then we amplify it. Kevin.
So what are your thoughts on like the duality of teaching on a webinar versus like not teaching? Because like
Yep.
you're always going to have the people that say like, this isn't a webinar, like this was a sales pitch for an
Right,
hour,
right,
versus
right.
like the bottom line is I want to make the most money and add the most students so they can, you know, change their lives as often as possible. What's your thoughts on?
I'm glad you asked that. I have a philosophy that dictates everything that I do, and it's about learning. And my belief is learning only occurs when behavior changes. And that is fundamentally where all elements of my persuasion are built from, is unless behavior changes, learning hasn't occurred. And so if I get on a webinar and for 4 hours give you information, like encyclopedic knowledge on something, your behavior is unlikely to change for the better because you're going to feel overwhelmed. You were overeducated, which is why people tend to stray away from education, because they don't want to freak and actually accidentally make somebody smarter, right? Just by the way, there's the curse of knowledge. It's another cognitive function. People that are ignorant overestimate their abilities, and people that are like super masters underestimate their abilities, because the guy that's ignorant doesn't know the 56 ways he can fucking kill himself, right? And the guy who's an expert knows every tiny little detail of how something can go wrong. And so the idea here becomes, how do we create behavioral change? That's what we want to do. I believe the right type of education is the most effective way to create behavioral change. I believe that, and this is my goal of every single webinar I ever do. Now, all of this is a setup to get to the webinar, right? But once they get on the webinar, my goal is always the same. How can I, in 50 minutes, give them the feeling of, oh my God, in 50 minutes with this one person, I feel better than the last 50 hours I spent with the last 50 gurus. This one stranger in 50 minutes did more for me, made me feel more excited about the future than the last 50 hours from the last 50 gurus. How can we do that in 50 minutes? And the beautiful thing about this is if you put a target up, you can usually hit it. Most people just go in and play blind archery, right? So I said, what would that need to happen for somebody to say, my whole world's changed? I can't even go back. You could take a rubber band and stretch it, and it can go back to its same shape. But if you stretch it far enough, it breaks, and you can never put that rubber band back again, ever. My goal is to take your conceived model of reality of whatever you're doing right now, and however it's limiting you, and shatter it, and then never allow you to put the pieces back together, because then you're forced to change. And human beings are usually intelligent enough to do things that are in their best interest. And so you'll change for the better. So what do I have to do to make that happen? I have to give you the right dosage and prescription of education, because that's the ultimate form of authority. The ultimate form of authority is when you listen to somebody say, that person knows more than anybody the problems that I face and has the solutions for that. So how do we do that education? For each percentage of that we lack of doing that, we have to make up for with sales techniques, right? So each piece that we lack in that, we have to tie things down. So wouldn't you agree with that? And that makes sense, doesn't it? And now that you know that, what can you do that you couldn't do before, right? We can use all those types of sales techniques. Or we can, we all use them, and I use them too, right? But the more we have of that powerful kind of paradigm shift, the less of all that other sales techniques we have to use. And then we can use education as it's meant to be. Like Jordan Peterson, totally took over the internet. He wrote that book, 12 Rules to Live Life. It's not even that good of a book. But he empowered a whole group of kids with these 4-hour lectures on YouTube because he spoke to that. And the guy is the worst sales guy in the world. He doesn't know how to sell, but he's selling more than most of us because he did that. Now, we want to do both. We want to use the sales techniques, and we also want to create that feeling of when somebody gets on my webinars, I don't know about your guys', but my goal is always to say, holy cow, I've never heard anything like that before. That wasn't a webinar, that was a spiritual experience. And so we go hard and we figure out what that is, but it's usually a very clearly defined outcome. And we say that we show that in the book, right? What can I show them that they can now do that they couldn't do before the webinar, that they could do after the webinar? So a lot of it is very simple and very focused and very repetitive around the same kind of concept. But if you watch my Amazon webinar and you watch the 1,000 other Amazon webinars that are out there selling Amazon products, I guarantee you not a single one of them shows more information than I do. I show way more information. But I make the information so clear and so real and so obvious and so specific. I would rather err on the side of too much education and then pare it down, as opposed to too little and scale it up. Because like with the Zig Ziglar webinar, we cut out 25, 30%. We could cut out more, right? Because I was dealing with a guy who had 70 years of information, and we tried to condense that down into one webinar. I fucked that up. I put way too much in there, and then we kept whittling it away and whittling it away and whittling it away. But it's easier to subtract than it is to add. So put in all the good information and then condense it and remove it, and that's usually a better approach. Here's the last reason why I like it, and then we're going to go to lunch. I like it because nobody else will do it. Everybody else is now on the train of, God forbid we actually teach somebody something. That would be a travesty, wouldn't it? Imagine what that would do for your brand if people actually learned something from you before they paid you money. Oh my God, right? But it's true, because people tend to teach as an excuse to not motivate. Because we can all just rattle on for days. But if we're not doing the extra bit of discipline to understand what the information is, if I had more time, I'd have wrote you a shorter letter. That's a Mark Twain quote, right? That's when it really wins.